Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials. We're going to take a look at some of the stories we covered on this week's show and see some basic everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can draw from them. Ganesh Kasina was here on the show today. Welcome, Ganesh.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Let's talk about some of the stories we covered on the show this week. The first one you brought to us was about the Mustek botnet. Tell us just really briefly, first of all, what's a botnet?
Botnet is nothing but it's a conglomerate of various devices. Like a bot comes from the bot header. Like you have a bot header, there's a head, there's a master. I think in the scenario of a botnet, it's a combination of a list of computers or devices nowadays. It could be IoT devices or something like that. So as a whole, it's called botnet.
And the bad guys are using that to take over a bunch of machines so that they can use them for malicious purposes, right?
That's the goal, yeah. That's what typically a bot header or bot master does.
And tell me what happened here.
In this case, in order to grow their botnet, they're targeting certain devices with the Tomato firmware.
Now, that's an interesting name. What is Tomato firmware?
This specific firmware will be seen on router kind of devices like a Linksys or some Asus devices. Instead of the firmware from them, there's a Tomato firmware, which is like an alternative firmware.
So a lot of people who are very knowledgeable use this firmware on the devices instead of the manufacturer installed one because ostensibly it's safer or they can control more.
Yeah, I mean, in these scenarios, the Tomato, whoever is using the Tomato firmware, they're more knowledgeable, as I said, they're more geeky, nerdy, and they want to have this one so that they have greater control. Maybe they want to have some features which is not provided by the regular devices.
But it turns out that there are some problems with the Tomatoes.
Oh yeah, the thing here is any firmware, any devices comes with the default credentials. Even though the people are knowledgeable, there might be some oversight, they're using the default credentials. That's where this specific botnet is targeting.
So that's the username and passwords, and if you use the default ones, it's easy for bad guys to get into those devices and take them over.
Yeah, I mean, the default passwords for most of the devices are known for everybody. I mean, it just takes a couple of clicks to find out what are the combinations. If somebody is having default passwords, the device is going to be asked to be worn.
Okay, so at this point, I normally ask what advice can we give people, but given what we're talking about, I think I know what the advice is going to be, but why don't you tell me anyway?
I think in this case, change the default passwords. And if any patches are there, irrespective of the device, I think they needs to be patched.
So regardless of whether you're using Tomato firmware, any device, you want to change the default passwords.
Yeah, that's the first thing, and try to keep up to date with the vendor patches.
Now, Mike brought us an interesting story. This was about something called a honeypot. Tell me what a honeypot is. It's kind of like a trap, really, right?
Well, it is basically the same honeypot, how it is used to trap bees or something like that. The same concept has been used in the internet also. In this case, this set up a very enticing network, or maybe with various devices with the default passwords, like we talked about, maybe services which supposed not to be running, so that you entice the bad actor to come in and do something malicious.
So you can observe them and learn their techniques.
Exactly. That's the whole point. While they're coming in, you watch them, you try to learn, and maybe you learn something from that and maybe come up with the ideas, maybe countermeasures to how to detect and stop them. That's the whole concept behind the honeypot.
Now, I know it's a big concern because it's projects I've worked on here that have had to do with smart cities and industrial control devices. There's a lot of concern about bad actors breaking into, just say, manufacturing processes and shutting them down. So this honeypot was designed to look like a whole manufacturing company like that.
Yeah, I think in this they went to great lengths to mimic the, as you said, real industrial control systems, and they also implemented the most frequently used devices to incorporate into it. Also, they have, I think, even for robotic controls, they have that specific software which will be used in the automatic controls. They basically went to the great lengths to set up the whole scenario, but in a smaller scale, to observe it.
Now, the expectation was perhaps, that bad actors would break in immediately and then try, thinking that it was a manufacturing facility, try to shut down devices, try to cause some kind of damage. But the researchers found out that's not exactly what happened. So what happened?
Compared to Windows and Linux or IoT devices, industrial control systems are not prevalent in the sense they're not open to the internet as often as these. But the scenario is changing because of the usage of various IoT devices within the ICS and industrial control systems. And also, in most of these industrial control systems, there needs to be some sort of human interaction. That requires some sort of manual inputs from the bot headers. I think that might be a roadblock here. It's not the first target for them to target.
So they didn't try to do that. Instead, they broke into this honeypot thinking it was perhaps a real manufacturing company, but they did a lot of the things and malicious activities that we routinely see, right?
Yeah, I think, some of the bad actors came and they used to, store some questionable content, like a free storage, right? It's not yours, but you got the storage space here, you can store anything. They used for, I think, crypto mining, which is popular nowadays. You use someone's resources to gain for yourself. That's the theme nowadays. So they use crypto mining. I think they also tried to attempt a ransomware, but they couldn't able to encrypt the devices because maybe most likely these ransomware are designed for Windows-based systems. Per se, these are not really Windows-based systems. Maybe that's why they couldn't able to do it automatically. They have to manually come in and encrypt them.
Any lesson from this story?
Even though at this point the threat not seems to be at the high, but we are going to see threats targeting these automated systems. Again, try to have a layered approach and try to don't open the systems or services which are not required. And also, again, I go back to patching. In this case, you go to the specific vendors who supply the devices or maybe software to get up to date with patches.
Now, this week, George was on the show for the first time.
Yes.
Did a great job.
Yes.
And he brought us a story about Emotet malware. Tell me about that.
Emotet is one of the most prevalent and long-standing malware. It's a malware spam downloader. It's also actually a blended threat. Blended threat in the sense, sometimes bad actors use Emotet as an email campaign to deliver other malware, like a trick bot. So it started as a banking Trojan, but it morphed into something really, really big. And also it's constantly changing from so frequently that sometimes from week to week, they're coming up with new techniques to basically evade the threat detection capabilities.
So what's the takeaway from this story?
I mean, the takeaway is user awareness and training is the most key point here, because most of the time it comes as email attachments. I think users should be educated that most of the attachments should not be clicked on.
So we all need to be educated, but more importantly, if you're the head of a company or organization, you want to make sure that everybody who works there has security awareness training as well.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who is at that position. All the employees or users should be aware of what threats are out there. I mean, when in doubt, try to reach out to the security liaison, maybe someone Unix admin, maybe Windows admin, maybe someone you feel have more knowledge about that, but they can point to the right direction rather than clicking it and then basically downloading the malware to it and causing other problems.
So you really want to be suspicious of links and attachments that were sent to you that were unexpected.
Yeah.
Okay, well listen, thank you so much for being on the show this week, Ganesh, and thank you for watching. Please like our videos and subscribe to the channel below, and if you want to learn more about any of these stories, you can click on the playlist and take a deeper dive. We'll see you next time.